So here's how it all unfolded, though not in the way most people expect. It actually started with Justin Baldoni. He met her first. They crossed paths at a club where she was tearing up the floor with her salsa moves. Turns out, she's a professional dancer. Justin was instantly captivated, not in a flirtatious way, but something about her energy pulled him in. They talked. It wasn't romantic. Instead of asking for her number or angling for a date, he did something unexpected. He invited her into a conversation, literally. He said something like, "There's a group of us that meets to talk about elevated ideas, purpose, spirituality, how to serve humanity better. A group of women especially, sharing thoughts on all that. Would you be interested?" It threw her off, in a good way. She was curious. Who is this guy? She thought. Not the usual approach. So, she started showing up. That's when I met her. Now, I like to joke that she came after me, that she cornered me one day like, "Take me out, take me out." But okay, that didn't actually happen. What did happen was we slowly became friends. We were both in the space of exploring personal growth, doing these eye-gazing exercises. Yeah, the kind where you just look into each other's eyes and don't blink. It sounds intense, because it was. One day we were paired up, and something shifted. She always says she watched me fall in love with her in that exact moment. And truth is, I did. I tried to play it cool, but there was something undeniable, a quiet gravity pulling us toward each other. What started as connection became chemistry, and the rest, still unfolding. They had 2 films lined up, films they believed would become #1 or #2 at the box office. And with producer credits attached, it wasn't just about acting anymore. It was about power. They were aiming to become Hollywood's next golden couple, and honestly, I think that was always the end game. There was also this quiet rivalry happening, especially with Scarlett Johansson, who was stepping into directing with a documentary backed by Wayfair. And then there was Margot Robbie. Blake had lost out to her the year before for The Wolf of Wall Street, and now Margot was everywhere with Barbie. That film was a cultural earthquake. And Blake? She wanted her own Barbie moment. But she was never going to get it through Margot, not just because it was Margot's project, but because those two don't exactly get along. So Blake tried to carve out her own path. The ambition was there, sure, but what's also clear is that it was their actions, and their actions alone, that got them into this mess. And if there's any regret, it should be about how they treated people on the way up. It's strange, isn't it? One moment people are saying her friendship with Taylor Swift is over, and the next they're insisting everything's patched up. But let's be real. If Taylor has even a halfway decent PR team, they wouldn't let her anywhere near this situation right now. In Hollywood, association is everything. Stars are brands, and brands don't touch controversy unless they're built to survive it. And look around. How many of her friends have come out to support her? Almost none. That silence is deafening. Taylor stood up for Kesha in a very public way when she accused her producer of sexual assault. But now, nothing. The only people loosely speaking up for Blake are the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants cast, and even that feels like a stretch. It's not like they're close anymore. Everyone else? Gone. Quietly backing away as more details emerge. Studios are watching. If someone's known to be difficult on set, if they're rumored to hijack productions or make threats about press tours or obligations, that reputation spreads fast. And Hollywood? It doesn't forget. Directors, execs, they're all asking themselves if she's worth the risk. Could she bounce back? Maybe. But not like this. Not if they keep trying to fight their way out of this lawsuit. Now, let's talk about the legal response. Ryan's team fired back at Justin's lawsuit with a motion to dismiss. But honestly, it was almost laughable. It didn't hold much weight. What stood out to me, though, was the shift. He backed off the whole sexual predator smear and tried redirecting the argument entirely, like he's suddenly realizing how damaging that angle might be. Remember how last week I mentioned that Ryan's motion complained the claims were too vague? That they didn't say who he allegedly made the comments to or when he said them? Well, guess what? Justin's team came back with specifics. Danny Greenberg, a phone call, a specific date. And in a footnote, Ryan's team tried to dance around it. They said, okay, but that detail wasn't in your first amended complaint. You're just bringing that up now. It's classic legal bait and switch. Ask for specifics, then dismiss them for not being in the right place. It's all just tactics. Delay, deflect, deny. But the more this plays out, the more cracks are showing. And first, they denied there was a source. Then, once the source was identified, suddenly the argument shifted. Well, your amended complaint doesn't mention him. It's classic misdirection. Now he's arguing that he didn't defame 6 of the 7 plaintiffs, conveniently backing off the more inflammatory predator language. In his initial motion to dismiss, he went on for 5 pages about it. Now, he's pretending those statements were just protected opinion. Nothing actionable, nothing personal. Notice how he won't even use the term sexual predator anymore. Instead, it's watered down to predator statements, and he's clinging to the defense that they're merely opinions under the law. But here's where it gets interesting. They try to argue that the statements didn't imply any hidden facts. According to them, there's no indication of undisclosed information meant to push WME into dropping Baldoni. And they claim neither the opposition nor the FAC identifies any such implications. But that's simply not true. The complaint doesn't have to spell everything out. It's a notice pleading system. It just needs to outline enough for the case to proceed. And I believe Belden and Wayfair have done exactly that. It seems clear that the defense doesn't think they'll win this motion to dismiss. What we're seeing now is a desperate attempt to sway the judge in these final rounds. 2 replies from Ryan's camp and 1 from Balan's. They're trying to tip the scale, and then there's this bizarre, almost incoherent section. Let me read it to you. The Wayfair parties also argue that Mr. Reynolds got hold of communications between the Wayfair parties from Stephanie Jones that disproved the claims the Wayfair parties had orchestrated a smear campaign. But that claim is nonsensical. Nonsensical is right, but not for the reasons they think. The complaint never alleges that Reynolds had access to those communications at the time he made his statements. That point alone discredits their argument. And beyond that, the assertion that these communications disproved a smear campaign, that's flat out contradicted by the very materials they reference. They're cherry-picking from 2 unrelated sections of the FAC and clumsily merging them into a single narrative. It's sloppy. Reynolds didn't have access to any of that until long after the predator remarks. And the smear campaign talk didn't start until August, well after his initial comments. This entire portion is a mess. Then they claim Wayfair somehow admitted to an untraceable campaign. That's not in the complaint, anywhere. Honestly, it's hard to believe a professional wrote this. It reads like someone completely unfamiliar with the case. Now, shifting to a more strategic move, Wayfair's response to the motion to dismiss raised an interesting point. They cited a California tort, negligent interference with prospective economic advantage. Under this, they argued that Ryan's company had a duty of care, a legal obligation not to interfere with the film. Why? Because he was contracted to promote it. And then, rather than help, he allegedly went on to defame the director, the actor, and the studio, actively harming the project. Under California law, duty of care can arise through contract, statute, or even the nature of one's actions. They went through the necessary legal steps to establish that. And here's the kicker. They didn't say, "We have the contract, here it is." What they said was, "If we're allowed to amend the complaint again, we'll add a maximum effort as a party, and will include the contract under this tort. Ryan's response? He wants that whole thing thrown out. He outright admits that California law requires a plaintiff to plead duty of care, but claims the FAC doesn't address it directly. Then, he downplays everything, saying Wayfair is speculating about a contract they won't even present. And for that reason alone, he's demanding dismissal, with prejudice. Let's be honest, that's him saying loud and clear, "Don't bring my company into this." He's baiting them, hoping they'll either back off or fail to meet the burden. But here's the truth. If such a contract exists, and his company had a role, then yes, there may be a valid tort claim. He was being paid to promote a project. If instead he damaged it, that could absolutely fall under negligent interference. Until now, he skated by, pretending he was just the supportive husband, uninvolved. But if the paper trail says otherwise, then this story isn't over, not by a long shot. This whole situation is spiraling, and here's why that's a serious problem for them federal courts, and especially federal judges, don't like to toss out cases early when there are legitimate claims on the table. And from where I'm standing, I don't see this one getting dismissed outright. Even if the court did decide to dismiss it, it would almost certainly be with leave to amend. That means the plaintiff would be given a chance to fix minor issues in the complaint ratty.